Hi everyone. This video continues our investigation into what we see when we observe thought. This topic is called Thinking Guided by Reason. We will compare the introspective study of thought that we practice in the philosophy of freedom with the outer study of the brain practiced by cognitive science. In previous videos, we learned that when we introspectively observe a thought process, what we observe is not our present thought, but rather past thought that we have recalled to mind. We also learned that when we observe a thought process, we find it to be transparent and clear. We know the course it took, the connection between the thoughts, and the details of how the thought developed. In this step 54, we find that this transparent clarity of the thought process is completely independent of our knowledge of the physiological basis of thought. Introspection shows that in linking thought with thought, I am guided by the content of my thoughts. The materialist view is that a thought process is just an electrochemical reaction in the brain. Brain imaging and computer modeling are used to understand how the brain produces thought. The human brain is composed of about 100 billion neurons interconnected by trillions of connections. Some connections send up to 1,000 signals per second. When you ask how trillions of electrical chemical reactions produce a line of thought, you will always get a vague answer. Somehow, that's producing thought, says Charles Jennings, Director of Neurotechnology at MIT.
There are billions of neurons in the brain, sending and receiving information that make up our thoughts, control our behavior, regulate our bodies, and more. So how are all these neurons able to communicate? They do it through a combination of electrical and chemical signals.
How does each neuron know what to do? To relay information, neurons use chemicals called neurotransmitters, which are released from one neuron and received by another.
So how does each neuron know what to do when its receptors are activated? The receptors on a neuron's surface will only connect with the specific type of neurotransmitter that has the right chemical shape. Neurotransmitters that do not have the right fit will not bind to the receptor and therefore will not cause a response. And a neuron will only respond when enough neurotransmitters have fit into its receptors. Whether the neuron sends a signal depends on the amount and type of neurotransmitters that have connected to its receptors.
You can see why we are not concerned with how one physical process in the brain causes or influences another. In the philosophy of freedom, we observe thought directly, without the need to understand the complexity of brain physiology. A materialist is required to believe that the brain produces thinking, but research is finding that thinking produces the brain.
The basic technologies to enable us to look inside the brain and see its functioning are growing exponentially, and they're at a point now where we can actually see individual interneural connections forming and firing. We can see your brain create your thoughts. We can see your thoughts create your brain, because that's key to the secret of its operation, that we actually create the connections that constitute the hierarchy of the neocortex from our own thoughts.
It is our thinking that evolves the brain by creating new connections in the neocortex. Some believe the enlargement of the neocortex region of the brain holds the secret to our cognitive abilities. Science fiction stories have depicted highly intelligent aliens as having an enlarged neocortex. New research has shown that it is not the size of the brain, but the practice of higher conceptual thinking that evolves the brain. The natural structure of the human brain is only suited for basic survival tasks. If our life is to advance beyond basic survival, our thinking has to create our brain. The human brain was initially used for basic survival tasks, such as staying safe and hunting and gathering. Yet 200,000 years later, the same human brain is able to learn abstract concepts like momentum, energy, and gravity, which have only been formally defined in the last few centuries. The research showed for the first time how learning physics concepts is accomplished by repurposing neural structures that were originally used for general everyday purposes. This is why humans have been able to move ahead and innovate, because we can use our brain for new purposes. Says researcher Marcel Just, human brains haven't changed much over a few thousand years, but new fields like aeronautics, genetics, medicine, and computer science have been developed and continuously change. Our findings explain how the brain is able to learn and discover new types of concepts. The human brain is suited for the basic survival tasks of everyday life. This is the everyday state. When we enter the exceptional state and rise to the level of pure conceptual thinking, the neural structures of the brain are repurposed to reflect higher thinking. The advancement in knowledge is not the result of brain evolution, it is the result of disciplining thinking to reach the higher realm of pure conceptual thought. I will add here that the philosophy of freedom is not centered on acquiring knowledge. We seek knowledge that has value. Knowledge has value only by contributing to the all-around development of the whole of human nature. The new technology being developed to study the brain can be used to benefit or enslave humanity. It concerns me that brain research seems to be more focused on what we are thinking than how to think.
It seems like science fiction or something out of the movies, being able to read someone's mind, but it is happening for real right here in Pittsburgh. At CMU, they are decoding brains and reading thoughts.
We've broken the brain's code for thought.
So you are decoding the brain.
Yes.
You are figuring out what people are thinking.
Yes.
Researchers can read our minds because our brains light up in the same spot when we think the same things.
You're going to be seeing sentences one phrase at a time.
And they are now working on decoding full sentences. What do you see in the future?
Someday, I'll be able to point my smartphone at your forehead and see what you're thinking.
The human right to privacy will end when we lose the privacy of our own inner thoughts. Right now, we are rapidly losing our right to freely express our thoughts in the name of political correctness. In the future, vigilante social justice warriors will be armed with mind-reading phones to police our minds for any thoughts they find offensive. The philosophy of freedom is not centered on social justice. Dividing up people according to group identity is divisive. The philosophy of freedom is centered on human freedom for all. We are human beings in the fullest sense only insofar as we are free. Rational thinking is a step toward free thinking. What I observe by introspectively studying a thought process is my reason for bringing these two concepts into a certain relationship. My reason could be to explain why thunder follows lightning. Or my reason could be to explain how lightning causes thunder. Whatever the case, introspection shows that when forming a line of thought, I'm guided by the content of my thoughts. A rational line of conscious thinking is clear and can be understood by others. It is not guided by physical processes in the brain. Most people find it difficult to grasp the concept of pure thinking. Whoever is unwilling to make the effort to enter the exceptional state and observe thought cannot transcend materialism. They will remain in the everyday state and miss the experience of rising to the conceptual realm of higher thinking. The challenge for step number 54 is to notice the difference between rational thought and rationalizing. Rational thought is a genuine pursuit of truth based on reason and evidence. Rationalizing starts with the conclusion that one wants to be true, and then tries to prop it up with reasons and cherry-picking evidence. In the next video, we will discuss the thinker, the person who thinks. It is step to freedom number 55. I think, therefore I exist.